These tasty tubers have a roisterous reputation for being a blast to eat. I'm making these sweet and savory pickled sunchokes that everyone's gonna love. So let's get started. For a couple of years now, I've been hounding a guy at my everyday job to bring me some of the sunchokes that grow in his yard, and to his credit, I'm sure he'd have let me go over there and dig them up myself at any time, but I do command a certain level of servitude from my coworkers. Now, if you're not familiar with sunchokes, they're the root of a particular kind of sunflower, and they're a pretty tasty tuber as well, so you can cook this a lot of the ways you'd cook a potato. So roasted, they're great. Fried, they're good. But unlike a potato, these are also good to eat raw. They got a real nice crunch and kind of a starchy flavor, a little bit sweet, not unlike a jicama, and kind of similar to a radish as well. They don't actually taste anything like artichokes, but they are really good. Well, my man finally came through. Shout out to JD. The thing is, he didn't just bring me a few sunchokes. He brought me this entire sack of sunchokes, which is far too many for me to get through. Not only because it's a lot of sunchokes, but the sunchoke also has a more sinister reason for you to go easy on them. You see, these little guys have a starch in them called inulin. Now, inulin is the ingredient they add to that yogurt that keeps you regular. And it's also the reason sunchokes have earned the unfortunate nickname fartichokes. So you need to be wary of how many you eat in order to avoid a nuclear incident. So I'm going to roast a few of these and maybe put some in soup and salads, but I don't want the rest to go to waste, so I'm going to pickle them. And I'm going to start by cleaning them all up and soaking them in a salt brine to make sure they stay nice and crispy. I'm getting ready to trim and cut up my sunchokes, and as I'm doing that, any of these exposed cut areas will start to discolor. So to prevent that, I'm going to make a bath of cold water with a little lemon juice in it, and I'll put them in there as I'm working, and that'll keep them from discoloring. So I've got about 8 cups of water here, and I'm just going to put in the juice of a couple of lemons. Make sure your water's nice and cold too. Now, I want to cut these into some kind of half-inch size sections. Of course, I'll break off any of these ends that stick out there, and that'll help to get any of the dirt that's stuck in there. I'll go and wash any of that out that's left over, and then cut off any of these little shoots that are growing on there, like so, and then maybe cut that into another slice. So I got some kind of half-inch thick rounds there. You can see that one already starting to discolor, so get that over into my lemon water and that'll stop that. The next thing I'm going to do is make a salt brine for the sunchokes. Now that's something you do with a lot of vegetables before you pickle them, and the idea is that the salt in the brine will pull some of the moisture out of the vegetables, and that's going to help them stay nice and crunchy when they're finished. So I've got 8 cups of water here, and I'm going to add 1/2 cup of plain salt to that. Now that's all dissolved, so I'll drain that lemony water off of my sunchokes, and then we'll start brining them. Alright, everything's still nice and bright. Get the brine in there. You want to get enough brine in there to cover these up. And I am going to throw in some of these little tiny carrots too, because I want to put some of those into the jars for a little added flavor. Now this goes out into the refrigerator for at least 4 hours, but I just let this go overnight. Let's put together the pickling solution, and I'm going to start with 5 cups of vinegar. I've got 4 cups of white vinegar, to which I'm going to add in 1 cup of cider vinegar. Now, this is going to be kind of a bread and butter sweet pickle style, so I've got 1.5 cups of white sugar. I've got 2 tablespoons of pickling spice, 3 tablespoons of mustard seed, and for some color as well as spice, I've got 1 tablespoon of ground turmeric. I don't want a lot of the pickling spice floating around in the jars after this is finished, because a lot of these spices in here are really tough and or really powerful if you bite into them. So I'm gonna make a little satchel of spices with this piece of cheesecloth. This is completely optional. If you want to leave those things in there, they're not difficult to eat around. I nearly forgot, I'm going to add in 1 cup of plain water just to kind of take the edge off of that vinegar. Now I'm going to bring this up to a simmer, let it simmer for just a few minutes, then I'll turn that off, let this cool down to right around room temperature before I fill the jars. Now, this is ready to go. I just need to let it cool down a little, and that'll give me plenty of time to set up my pickle station outside. Now, I've got my station all set up, everything's ready to go. The water bath is nice and hot over there, so it's finally time to pack these jars. Now, I went ahead and I strained the mustard seeds out of the pickling solution because I want to make sure and get some of those in every jar. I also cut up some red chilies because I want a little spice there, and I'll pop a couple of those in each jar. I strained the brine off of my vegetables, and you'll notice I didn't put any salt in that pickling solution, and that's because that brine has left these vegetables plenty salty. So now, all that's left to do is pack the jars. So, I'll get in some of my veg, a nice chili, and I just want to kind of put these up just below that bottom thread right there, and that's where I'll fill that jar with the pickling solution, and that way everything will be in the solution. Oh, maybe one more little guy right over there, and a chili or two. Oh. And we're good to go. Give them a little shake down. The air worked out. And then top it off. Just until it touches the bottom edge of that funnel right there. Now we'll go through, wipe all those rims and threads off. Now I've got my lids, got them sterilized here. I boiled them. Ooh, they're nice and hot still. Ha-ha. Oh, and I did sterilize the jars beforehand too. A lot of people will say with something this acidic, you don't need to sterilize the jars. And to them, I just say, well, it couldn't hurt. It's easy to do, and then you know you're being safe. Ooh, that's hot. All right. Now, rings go on. The ring does not go on nice and easy. If it fights you at all, just throw it away. If any dents or it's tough to get on there, you don't want to use it. Now, just put those on snug. I'm not going to really wrench down on them. All right. Now let's get these over and into the hot water bath. I'll just lower my basket in there. It's real nice having this canning basket. If you don't have one, just make sure you get a rack so your jars aren't right on the bottom of the pot. And you gotta make sure they're submerged. That looks good. And now when this comes back up to a boil, I'll start a timer and we'll process those for 10 minutes. Don't let the air bubbles that are escaping from the jars right away fool you into thinking that this is boiling. That's just the air getting forced out of the jars and creating the vacuum that's going to keep this stuff shelf stable for a long time. So actually wait for the water to come up to a true boil before you start your timer. Now all that's left to do is let these cool down, then I'll put them on a shelf and let them soak up that pickling solution for at least a week, but 2 is even better. It's been a couple of weeks since I processed the sunchokes, and now it's time to see how we did. So, of course, we'll test the top, make sure there's no pop. That looks good, so we've got a good seal. Now, let's pop that thing off of there. Check out that bite. Very nice. These have a really great crunch, and the flavor is sweet, a little bit spicy, salty, and sour, and it's got a tiny bit of bitterness from the turmeric. These are gonna go great on a charcuterie plate like I have here. I got some of my own kielbasa, some of my own bratwurst, and the reaperoni, and you can find all of these recipes on the channel. But it's really nice to have something acidic to kind of cut the fattiness of the meats and the cheeses on the charcuterie plate. And these are guaranteed to be a conversation starter if you're around the foodie crowd. Just be careful how much you indulge, lest the conversation become more effervescent. Thanks for watching.